and myself. We can tell Jay who's in attendance online,
Okay,
the names that are here.
thank you.
You have to be here pretty regularly doing this?
Me, I'm all over.
Okay.
Hi, Kevin. Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Hi. Can you see me?
I can see you.
Wow. Okay. Progress.
It sounds all quiet elsewhere, but I think they're just kind of getting ready.
Yeah.
There's other people in the room. There's Dave's there and Charles is there.
Yeah, I think they're planning to meet before things really start, but it sounds like we're not gonna be part of that discussion.
I don't need to be.
No, I know you don't need to be. You're happily not.
These things I'm usually just happily sitting as a wallflower, but unlike in junior high where I'd be out there dancing.
How about in high school?
High school too. Yeah, no, I was one of the people who was in that particular part of life. I would just get out there and dance.
Mhm. Keep right at it. It's good for you.
Yeah, yeah. Because I figured somebody had to dance. We came all the way to the dance. Might as well dance.
You play an instrument?
I play minimal guitar.
Okay, that's good.
I had a buddy who played guitar, and I would kind of do a few things with him.
Ah, excellent.
There's Dan.
Hi, Dan. You made it.
We can see you. Oh, now we can see Dave. We're panelists, so we can, because otherwise, they're like people won't be just any old person won't be seen on the screen.
Gotcha.
Since we're actually live right now on YouTube, I can't hear you, Dan. You're muted there.
Okay, there we go. How's that?
Oh,
You're good.
Hi, Dan.
Okay. So we're panelists, like what's my line, right?
Right, right.
That dates two of us, Kevin. And
This is says who or whatever. That thing on Saturday on VPR. It's like
Uh-huh.
it felt about 11 in the morning. They have those comedian panelists. Oh, and I see now they have the main screen there going.
I see that.
They've got an owl, so they can kind of see around the room.
Yeah. Yeah, this is the first time I've done this with joining a live meeting like this.
Yeah, I've been panelists on some things. I don't think I've ever actually seen my screen do this particular setup before. But I think pretty much when I've been panelists, like on webinars, they'll turn me on and then they'll turn me off. Just so when I'm talking, I'm up.
Yes, I was planning on going, but my daughter, who was with us the whole Christmas vacation, just called to say she and her husband had COVID. So far, nothing here, but I didn't want to.
Yeah. No, I wasn't going to go anyways, but I got a call today that I'm a close contact of someone from the weekend. So
Me
It's
too.
almost like I think everyone's going to get it.
Yeah.
everybody is going to get it,
Yeah.
and you may not know it. I mean, you just
No, that's right. Yeah, I'm hoping.
Let's hope not.
Mm.
My daughter didn't get very sick, but her husband. I guess they're recording us now, so maybe we should be quiet.
or sing or something. Look at all that greenery Catherine has.
Yeah. This is my mother's place in Woodstock.
My God.
Yeah,
Those are real plants? Wow.
they are.
Wow,
It's like a
terrific.
greenhouse.
Yeah.
Yep. Yep. Green thumb.
I'm good in gardens, but I'm pretty death on houseplants.
houseplants keep you here in the winter. That's what
Yeah.
we're learning. Or force you to get someone to come in and water them. Although this winter, it doesn't matter.
The ones in my office have stayed alive for the last couple of years. I'll go in, keep them going.
I'm not hearing anything from the town hall, are you?
I am not. It looks like
Yeah,
It's
I just see
muted.
that. Yeah, well, that was, Charles was just got in the chair and got back up.
But
but
there's,
but when I first got on, I could hear them. They could hear me.
Oh, okay. Something just.
And
went
we
on.
are live. Yes, I see the little note there from the
Mhm.
CATV person. So if somebody's watching CATV at home, for example, they're seeing us now. If this is the for those of you at home, this is a live event. This is what it looks like.
Charles wants me to call him. I don't know what that means.
So you can call them off. Off script.
He's not on my speed dial. I've never called him before.
Oh, and then there is a number
number.
there for us to.
Oh, all right. Let me get my phone. I didn't.
Hi, guys.
Hi, Rebecca.
Hi. So we're live, Rebecca, just so you know. This is
Let me change my name.
streaming out on those giant video screens in the concert hall.
I got my phone, but now I lost
So go to the chat, Dan, and you'll see that number.
chat. Okay, thanks. Oh, okay, yep. Glad you're on, Kevin.
I'll do a few useful things, but hopefully, as I was telling Catherine, I will just stick to the side most of this.
Well, you've been invaluable so far.
I just turned my video off because I'm eating. Sorry.
Yes, we are live. So
Talking on the phone.
and if you want to mute Dan, you might want to do that while you're on the phone here. And Dave Ormston, I know Dave Ormston's at the town office, as is Charles Jeffries. And I don't know why any one of us is in particular big right now.
Well, I called him, but he said I just got a message recording, so I don't know what's.
You can always chat him back.
Yeah, all right.
For the host and the panelists, you'll see if you go to the chat, you can chat to hosts and panelists, and so all of them can see what you type, or you can click that little thing to the right and pick everyone, and then anybody on the call can see what you do. So
Well, let's see. Who can see your messages? Host and panelists.
so everybody up top of your screen, if your screen's like my screen.
Now I type in, or is that a?
Yeah, you can.
All right.
And Charles will be able to see it.
Where does the graphic get picked up, though? I don't see where I'm typing here.
Oh, right below it, there's usually, just as soon as you start
Type
typing.
message here, I see it, right?
Yeah, and they have to be careful because return sends, remember. I'm always doing that when I'm doing chats. I was like, I want to do a paragraph space. Oh, it just went. It looks like there's just us. Well, we have
Yeah.
we have three attendees too
Yeah.
out there.
Well, I recognize Rebecca's picture, but I don't, I don't see or hear her.
Yeah, we won't see.
There she-
Hi.
Hi.
I'm eating, so I don't want to
Oh, I
gross
see.
you guys out. Sorry.
Oh, you were the one who said you were eating. Okay.
But
Yeah.
I heard a voice say that, but I didn't know it was you.
if up top on your right, if you see participants over there on your right, do
Right.
we all
Yeah,
see
it
that?
depends what you're eating, whether we want to see you or not.
Right. And so if you click on panelists, you'll see that list. And if you click on attendees, you'll see other people, which we'll never see the attendees pop up, I don't think. We'll never actually see their little box. We have three right now: Michelle, Rebecca Genovese, and Roger and Clyde.
So Kevin, when I type the message to
Mhm.
Charles, you can probably see it. He's getting it, right? So
Yeah.
I don't have to hit send or anything.
No, you just have to hit return and it'll go.
Okay.
There's Charles.
Yeah, now it looks like he's coming on here.
Have you used the owl before, Dan? It split screens the room.
Oh yeah. Where do I go for that?
We can't mess with it, but the
Okay.
videographer is doing
Okay.
it. And it,
Right.
it tends to run on who is making actual noise in the room. So it'll kind of shift around depending.
Okay.
But they can actually swivel it on
Yeah.
their own.
Yeah, I was going to do a presentation and then, well, each of us who had the chapters was going to do the presentation and then, but I thought that Charles was going to control things, and take the questions.
I didn't think I was giving a presentation. I thought we were just answering any questions that came up.
Yeah, yeah. When I said presentation, it meant just a few introductory words. That's basically just to tell them what, if anything, changed in the section. Like some sections were whole new. Okay, all right. He's chatting with me now.
Oh, good.
I see Rebecca's chat. Going for some production values there.
So is Charles going to kind of be the MC
Yeah.
for the evening? All
Yeah,
right.
he's the chair now, so
I see him nodding there.
oh, he can hear us.
Yeah, everybody in the room can hear us, I'm assuming.
Yeah, okay, all right.
You guys hear us?
We do.
Yes,
Can you hear me now?
Yep.
From that Verizon, can you hear me?
So the three attendees, in order for them to speak, there's a raise your hand button at the bottom. So the attendees will need to raise the hand, and then Charles can pick on them, and Cedar will unmute that. Then they'll need to unmute their computer.
okay.
Didn't know you did wood sculptures, John.
What's that?
I didn't know you did wood sculpture.
Bird carving.
But all about it from someone.
What, yeah. For patients. A lot of fun, actually. Yeah. You know Floyd, you ever heard of Floyd Scholes?
No.
He's actually a he's probably one of the best in the world. And he lives between Hancock and Florida. He does full-size eagles in flight.
Yeah.
And he's on a peregrine falcon grabbing a duck in flight, and it's all mounted through one wire through the wing.
Oh my goodness.
And he offers about a half a dozen classes a year. And I've taken a few classes from him, and but yeah, I enjoy it.
Not so much decoys then, or
No, it's all feathers.
Yeah.
Actually,
fine detail?
you would burn the fletchings.
Yeah.
Into the feathers.
Yeah.
He did a golden eagle in flight. We figured he had 60 miles of burning of fletchings in it. But that, and I do wood turning.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah, wave.
yeah,
How big a swing is the wave?
16-inch.
Oh, that's good
It'll do a
size.
16-inch.
Oh, that's
Well,
good.
actually, if I buy an attachment for it, the head can rotate out.
Yeah.
So you could actually do
There you are.
something really big.
As tall as you can stand.
Yeah.
John, Bruno, can you hear me? It's Kate. Did you get the forest block percentage?
Yeah, I've got I got a page here that I'll present.
Okay. It looked like it was 20%.
Yeah.
Yeah, that sounded, just from looking at it, sounded certainly close, if not right.
Well, after I made the email, I found it in the chapter.
When I did the map, I calculated it and I couldn't remember myself. So 20 is a good number, is a reasonably good number. You say Gary was on there?
Roger Treasure.
Oh, Roger was on. Hi, Roger.
He can't speak back, Jay.
Oh,
He's
he
gotta,
can't. Oh, okay.
he's gotta raise his hand and then be
Oh, okay.
unmuted.
Thank you for reminding me, Dave. I don't get to see these people very often, so hard not saying hi.
So Gary is on now, and you also got Rob Andridge, so you got 5 now.
Okay. Did I steal your pen?
Not mine.
Huh?
That's fine. You can have it if you want.
This is yours?
Are you gonna make anything up?
Wait, where's my wallet?
I'll return it. Is Kevin on? Oh, yeah, but he can't. Is he a panelist or no?
Yep.
We have Gary Krieger, Pam Crane, Roger, Claudine, and Stacy Bradley also. None of them should be.
No, they're all attendees, correct?
Hey, Dave, just by definition, as a panelist, does he have active voice all the time or just when his hands up?
Kevin?
Yeah,
Kevin, as soon as if he unmutes himself, he's got constant access to you
okay,
to talk and to share his screen.
okay.
Yeah, and I have, I mean, one of you may have it too, Charles may have it. I have the plan kind of sitting over here on the side. So I could share that if needed.
I'm gonna, if that does come up, Kevin, I'm gonna let you do that rather than me.
Okay.
Thank you.
Who's got the official clock?
I'm going off the clock on my tablet and it says 6:58. Peter? When I look at this on my screen here, I don't see any of the attendees, their pictures.
Oh,
Is it just because I've got enough people that I can't see them all?
well, yeah, they don't show up in there.
Okay.
Unless they're unmuted and moved to channels. Because it's a webinar, so.
Okay. But we'll see that if we do unmute them, we'll be able to see them over here. Do you see them over there? If somebody's waving and trying to get our attention, is somebody gonna see that?
Well, isn't he gonna, or one of you gonna tell me?
Yeah, I'm thinking if somebody's struggling to get in contact.
Oh, so there's a raised hand feature.
Okay.
They'll have their hands up over here, I think. Yeah, in the attendees panel. So if
Okay,
you go to
that'll
panels,
work.
then-
Thank you.
Yeah.
You'll see it down here. The hand should light up.
All right, it is 7 o'clock, and so I think we should get started. Can the Zoom attendees hear me? Yes. Okay. So it's 7 o'clock, and we're here for a public hearing regarding the Hartland Town Plan. I'm Charles Jeffries. I am the chair of the Planning Commission, and I'll be running this meeting. And when it comes to giving comments, I would ask that people wait to be recognized so that we can have so we can get everybody's comments. What we're here to do is we're here to receive comments from the public about the plan, the Hartland Town Plan. The Hartland Town Plan is a group of chapters that describe the town of Hartland and describe the policies that help us develop our planning about the town. This is something that goes on at least every 8 years. Right now, by state statute, we are required to readopt the town plan at least every 8 years. The last time the town plan was adopted was the spring of 2017. But there have been some new required chapters from the state about, that all towns have to have. And we're adding that specifically, that is the forest block chapter. And we're also making significant updates to the energy chapter, the facilities and utilities. And then we're making some minor changes to the districts chapter as well as the economic development. So for verbal comments, I would ask that you wait to be recognized to give your comments so we can hear everybody. If there are people who have written comments that they would like to submit, if they've already submitted them, that's great, and we'll see those. Is there anybody who has written comments that they have not yet submitted? And I'm watching for somebody to put their hands up. And I can't see if anybody is. Can anybody see that?
Nobody yet, Charles.
Okay, so if somebody did, please let us know. You could also say it in the chat. What?
So Charles, I saw one person just put their hand up in the chat.
And I'm looking for that. Can you see who it is?
Oh, maybe they took it down. I don't see it now.
Okay. If somebody wants to leave written comments, please put it into the fact that you want to leave them into the chat, and we'll work that out. The way that I'm going to work this tonight is we're going to start with the forest blocks because that's the chapter that saw the most change because it's a brand new chapter. It's never been seen before. And then we're going to go through the utilities and facilities. And with each chapter, a member of the Planning Commission is going to say a few brief words about that chapter, and then we're going to ask if there are comments from the public on that chapter. So we're going to start with the forest blocks, and then we're going to go into Chapter 7, Utilities and Facilities, and then Chapter 6, Energy, then Chapter 1, Districts, which is the land use chapter. And connected to that, we're also going to do Chapter 9, Economic Development. And then we'll do Chapters 2 through 12 because those chapters are not changing very much. And if somebody has general comments about the town plan, but they're not specific to any particular chapter, we'd ask that you hold those until after the chapters are done. Does anybody have any questions? I'm waiting to hear if there's any hands up. I'm not hearing any questions. So, John, are you ready to do forest blocks?
Sure.
Okay, I'm going to turn this over to John Bruno for forest blocks.
The forest block and habitat connectivity chapter, as Charlie mentioned, is a new addition to the town plan as required by the state since 2018. Since it is important to minimize forest fragmentation and maintain wildlife or habitat connections. Consequently, since 2018, town plans are required to identify forest blocks and habitat connections, and approximately 20% of the town of Hartland's area has been identified within the forest block and habitat connection boundaries. Other than to follow any existing town and state logging and/or clearing regulations, the only regulatory function of the goals, policies, and actions outlined in this chapter only apply to projects under the jurisdiction of the Vermont Act 250. And I might want to emphasize that as far as anything other than Act 250 and other regulatory things, this has no relationship to any regulation. However, implementation of the goals and policies of this chapter should be considered by individual property owners in their forest management plans in order to provide for minimizing forest fragmentation, maintaining and enhancing natural diversity, population, and migratory routes of wildlife, and to provide a productive and sustainable forest and forest products industry. And if you look at the town plan, it goes into detail on the goals, policies, and actions that were developed as part of this chapter. I think that's about it.
Okay. Are there any members of the public who have comments regarding the forest block chapter? And I'm watching and I'm listening to see if anybody sees that there are comments. Are there any comments? I'm not hearing any. Okay.
No, just emphasize that they need to raise their hand.
Okay.
So that we can unmute them so they can make a comment.
So if anybody has any comments, you could be using the raise your hand feature, and then we would unmute you and let you make your comments. Is there anybody with comments? You could raise your hand or use the raise your hand feature. And I'm not hearing that anybody, nobody has their raise. Okay, that's fine. Okay, I'm gonna move us on to utilities and facilities with Steve Cohn.
If you have access to the draft plan, Chapter 7 is utilities and facilities. It includes 17 different topics ranging from town and government offices, fire protection, solid waste, recreation, libraries, schools, cemeteries, etc. As part of our update for this plan, the Planning Commission sent basically a needs analysis or request to all parties listed in the chapter. And there are 4 points that I'd like to share with you that came back in those responses. The response relative to Damon Hall and administrative space, vault issues and drainage was mentioned. It was indicated that the recommendation be that discussions begin, but that for the foreseeable future, the life of this plan, it should be okay. The next item that was identified was the town highway garage, both space and age issues, and the salt shed size and location. As with the Damon Hall conversation, those conversations and discussions need to begin, but at the moment, for the life of this plan, they would be sufficient. The more immediate issue was the ADA access in the rec center. Those conversations have already started and will continue, and we will hopefully see some resolution on that in the not too distant future. And in conjunction with the response from the town manager, the town clerk also reiterated the need for more vault space for storage, etc. That conversation, town clerk, town manager, will take place concurrently, hopefully reaching some resolution that will then be eliminated from conversation in the next town plan. Thank you.
Okay, are there any public comments about chapter 7, utilities and facilities? And I'm watching to see if anybody uses the raise your hand feature. And I'm waiting to give everybody an opportunity. I'm hearing none. I think I can see any from here. All right, I guess there are no comments. Then we can move on to chapter 6 with Jay for energy.
My name is Jay Boeri. I'm the clerk of the Planning Commission. And I would like to start by thanking the Hartland Energy Committee. They did most of the legwork on the energy section. We've had energy sections, chapters in the town plan for many years. But starting in 2017, there was lots of changes given different energy crises around the world that affects us. So again, they were very instrumental. I was the representative from the Planning Commission to the Energy Committee, so we spent some time with them looking it over, and I would like to just quickly summarize it. The report in 20 pages is broken down into 3 sections. The first is an analysis of where are we today, who uses what amount of energy in Hartland, broken down fossil fuels, hydro, PV, and what's our use today. The second part has to do with standards that have been set by the state, as the state of Vermont wants to be 95% renewable by 2050. So that means individual towns will have to meet a certain reduction in energy between now and 2050. So they've, in the different charts in the section, they give us an idea of what we could do. The third section is more specific about how we create a pathway for those reduced amounts of energy. And again, it's a bit technical. One should look carefully at all the recommendations, too many to mention here, but anybody has any specific comments after they read it, they should get back to us and we can explain those more minutiae details. Probably the biggest impact is a map that was created that shows what the Planning Commission felt was appropriate areas for new photovoltaic arrays. And we have decided there are 3 particular areas that should be used, and that is the 2 industrial areas in the future land use map. And the third one is at the Greater Upper Valley Solid Management Waste District, where they're going to put in a 500 kilowatt array. So those are the ones that really had our attention for fast service. And then the other parts of town are broken down on a map that you see is map number 8. It shows the town in detail. It has parcels, individual parcels of land, so you could see on the map, if you're a particular landowner, where it's possible, under certain conditions to put in a new PV array. So that's a general view of the energy section.
Okay, are there any comments about the energy chapter, chapter 6? You can put your, click on the raise your hand feature down at the bottom of your screen. You may have to wiggle your mouse to get that to come up. Is anybody making comments? Yes, Rebecca Genovese. And if you would unmute Rebecca. Okay, we're working on unmuting you back, Rebecca. We'll be right there. We're getting there.
Yeah. I guess you should be allowed.
Okay, you should be unmuted, Rebecca. Go ahead. And we're working on it. Looks like she's muted now. Now she's unmuted.
Okay, second time's the charm.
Here we go.
Nice.
Hi, Rebecca Genovese. Thanks, Jay. My question, I guess, is there, I guess this might be just an overarching thing to throw out, which we can not deal with, but as a small landowner in Jennyville amongst really big landowners, I'm wondering, is there anything in place solar wise that says there has to be some sort of neighbor agreement on placement? And is there any move towards, for freestanding solar arrays, a minimum lot size? Because I can tell you that sitting on a half-acre lot, I can't see where I could put one that it wouldn't be a complete nightmare.
We appreciate your concern. Depending on the size of the array, there are different rules apply. If on a half-acre piece of land, you might be hard pressed to put in a minimum size one unless it sat on the roof of your garage or your home or something to that effect. So anything that's less than 15 kilowatts, you have to apply, you have to notify any abutters of what you're trying to do.
Great.
There's no state requirement for review, but then it would come back to the planning commission about, okay, the neighbors should get together and have a discussion about it. It wouldn't necessarily rule it out, but at least it opens the opportunity for review. If you have a project that's between 15 and 150 kilowatts, you step up in the review process. And again, if you go back and look in the document, you can see what's required for that. In a range of 150 to 500, in a 500 kilowatt array, might require, 5 or 6 or 10 acres of land. And that actually has a fairly stringent state review. And it's an automatic review by the planning commission to all the standards in the document, in the other document that have to do with just environmental or aesthetic concerns. So again, depending on how big the project wants to be, it just scales up in the review process.
That's exactly the answer I was looking for. Thank you very much. It's not me. I'm just wondering, what defense? Do we still have some semblance of a good neighbor policy left here? And that's great news.
Yes. And we
Thank
would
you.
hope that would be true. You're welcome.
Are there other comments about the energy chapter, chapter 6? I'm watching. Rebecca, you may need to click on the raise your hand feature in order to make your raised hand go away. And is there anyone else with comments? I'm watching for a raised hand. And I'm not seeing any. And so I'm going to, it looks like we don't have any more comments. And so I'm going to move on to chapter 1 with Dan. And I don't know how, Dan, you want to talk about it, but you could also talk about economic development at the same time because of the connection there.
Okay.
Whichever way you'd like to do it.
All right, well, I'll start with chapter 1. As people can see, the chapter 1 sets out the land use plan. In other words, we've looked at the Hartland and the site and pretty much where traditionally there have been town centers and rural residential areas and rural areas. And we've tried to come up with definitions and plans about what's allowed in each district. There's industrial districts, and you can see that in the, I won't go through every one. There were very few changes that we did in this town plan, we pretty much, the districts themselves and what's allowed and well, it's not so much what's allowed, it's what our position is for future growth, mostly on commercial in these different areas. So we didn't really change anything. So the town, the town will continue hopefully to develop in the way it has without too many changes. The reason we have this section in the town plan is to let the Act 250 know what the town's thinking was in terms of commercial applications that come before the Act 250 board. The one change we did make in the actual districts themselves is the I-91 interchange area. And we slightly expanded that district. We had talked about when we came to review the plan, the 2017 plan, we had put language in there about what's called the bowl that's behind the Varney property. And we put in the description of the interchange area, that bowl. But then we didn't, probably by oversight, didn't amend our boundaries of the interchange area to include that bowl. So we have now done that. So the interchange area does now include the bowl, and the changes on the map, which at least on mine is at page 20. The other thing that we did with that section, we amended the language in that section because we wanted to emphasize that this was sort of an exception, because otherwise it sits in the middle of a rural section. And so we wanted to make sure of two things: is that the people getting off the interchange weren't confronted with a strip development. So we tried to keep that, let people know that wasn't our intention to encourage that. The other thing that we didn't want to do was to encourage businesses down in the I-91 area that would compete or unfair, or take business away from existing businesses that could be better, that either exist or would be better suited for the village center areas down the, and there's 3 of those, and they haven't changed at all. Let me just see if there was any other change I wanted to talk about. I think that's it. The other thing that we did with the other, with rural and rural residential areas, we just tightened up some of the language to let the, so the Act 250, if they're on Act 250 applications for commercial development, we wanted to make it plain that this was our strong intention, rather that should guide the commission in whether to grant those, whether it's in conformance with the town plan, and not just a suggestion. So we changed some, where you said development should do this, we changed that to shall, and that you'll see that throughout the that section. So maybe I'll pause here before I go to section 9 to see if there's any questions. So Charles, do you want to see if the...
Sure. So are there any comments about chapter 1, the districts chapter? Are there any comments? And it looks like there's at least one, and I don't know who it is yet. Mary Blake. Sounds like you're there, Mary. Go ahead.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yeah,
I can.
Okay, thank you, Dan. I'm here tonight because I have land that I own off of Town Highway 8. It's a class 4 road, and recently the town and the signatures gathered showed great concern and value regarding class 4 roads and trails in the town of Hartland. And in our current plan, do you see anything that revolves around commercial development and land use regarding, I'm in a rural section according to the map, and the language around how neighborhoods and abutting properties work with a commercial development in such an area where I live. The potential has been brought up that that could happen. I don't know if it will. And as a landowner, I want to know better, like how our town plan affects people like myself.
Okay, I'll
Go ahead.
did someone else want to speak?
Oh, go ahead, Dan. That was me.
Oh, okay. I'll try to brief it's a broad question and an important one. The existing town plan does set out, and when I get to the economics section, I'm going to talk about this in more detail. But basically, in the rural areas, the commercial development is limited to certain defined operations. We try to direct commercial operations towards the town centers and somewhat in the rural residential areas that pretty much track the main highways in the town and surround the village centers. But in the rural areas, we do try to limit commercial development to what is known as home occupations, and those are basically, well, I could quickly read it. It's a business that's conducted with less than 50% of the floor area of the dwelling. So we've tightened up those definitions, and that was one of the things we did address and did change in the section 9. So why don't I suggest, Mary, that I do that, and then then you can ask your question, maybe repeat the question, or it might help you with the with what you were asking.
Okay, Dan, thank you.
So you want to ask for more comments about chapter 1? Is that it, Dan?
Yeah, let's see if there's more on chapter 1 before I go to chapter 9.
Okay, so does anybody else have Rebecca Genovese? I see Rebecca has a question. If we could unmute Rebecca. And there we go. Looks like you're unmuted, Rebecca.
I'm reading as you go, and as the 50-year daughter of the residents of the Red House on the Hill in that interchange area, I don't really see a reminder that there are residences in your I-91 interchange area also. So just want to make sure that that's really part of the plan also.
Oh, yeah, I mean, it recognized that there were residences, and was there anything that you found troubling about the existing language that?
No, I actually
certainly
like the cleaning up and specificity of this language here and in some other areas with businesses in rural areas. I just want to make sure that, existing residences in that area also are part of the plan.
Yeah. Well, they are, and it was certainly our intent. If you feel that we were, there was some confusion there, we could see what that is. But almost in every area in the town, even the industrial areas, there's residences. So we're well aware of that.
Hey, Dan, this is Jim Riley. Just one comment in that what you're referring to as the interchange area really is one of the 4 corners of that interchange.
Yes,
So get this wrong.
yes, it's not the.
That's where I was going. Yeah, go ahead.
Northeast. So totally the opposite. So Rebecca's
Yes.
house is in the southwest.
Yeah, Rebecca, if you look at the detail map of the I-91 area, your parents' house is not is in a rural area, and that's very limited. The only house that's, and even, where David Dow lives on 42nd Street, the little house just past the Muni's garage.
She's, I don't think that she is
Oh,
able
is
to.
she,
speak
she live?
Here we go. Here she is.
Yes. I played over at that house a lot. I know how to go to the river from there even.
Even the Dow's house is not in the I-91 interchange section. The only house that is located there now is where land surveyor moved in just to the south of the Varney house.
Gotcha.
And those, and that's, so your parents' house, anything on the west side of Route 5 is not in that district. So it's a very limited district, and you should look at the map to see how a minimal number of houses and that are well protected in the details of the section. So take a look and take a look.
Great. Thank you.
Okay, so are there any other comments regarding chapter 1, the districts chapter? Anybody with comments could put their hand up now. I'm giving everybody a chance to put their hand up. I'm not seeing any hands up. I'll wait a little bit longer, but I still don't see any. So I'm going to take that as no comments, no further comments. And so, Dan, if you wanted to move on to chapter 9, economic development.
Okay. And thanks, Jay and Jim, I didn't know where she lived, and I assumed so my answer was assumed we were talking about the same area. But yeah, it was important to point out that the interchange area generally is rural, but there is one section that we have zoned. It's mostly where the existing businesses already are, and we did expand that area a little bit into the bowl area. Okay, so moving on, the economic development, same thing. We made some general changes to let it be known that this was to make it clearer what was actually our intention for our plan as opposed to just suggestions. The one area that we did change was that businesses and enterprises, and the previous town plan sort of was a little bit squishy on about, what constituted home occupations, home businesses, and home enterprises. Even though those terms were in the definition section, we pretty much, we weren't specific enough in the actual economic development section. So what we did was we went through that and specifically defined those. Basically, and this might maybe anticipate a question from someone who lives in a rural area, that in the rural areas, really only home occupations, which is are defined as being allowed in those areas. So again, we're talking about commercial things that would need Act 250 permits for this section even to come into play. And it's really to advise the Act 250 or the district commissions about what our town plan says about these things. So we kept that that the business that would be conducted less than 50% of the floor area. One thing we did though was and this is a change since 2017, and that the 2017 plan didn't anticipate, and that was what a lot of people using their homes for Airbnb, short-term rentals is the term we used for them. And we did not want to exclude or discourage people from doing that, but we wanted to be clear about the difference between renting out a room or two short-term as part of your home, and businesses that would want to try to come up and actually be run as small inns. And we did. There was a property that had there was a Act 250 hearing about, and because that wasn't in our town plan, that distinction, even though we might not have wanted to have permitted it, we were not able to. We weren't able to have convinced the commission that should be included in our plan about that it was anything other than a home occupation. So it's now very clear that home occupations are the only businesses that are allowed in the rural areas. Home businesses and small enterprises are generally allowed in all areas, including the rural residential areas. And then the town centers are where the more traditional businesses are located. So unless someone on the planning commission has something to add, maybe we can go to.
If I could add one thing for more to Mary's question. You should realize that even though Hartland has no zoning, no land use, any commercial project on greater than 1 acre of land is automatically in Act 250 jurisdiction. If it's in Act 250, then the full weight of the town plan comes into effect. And so I would say, Mary, that if someone were to do a large project, however you want it, whatever the commercial aspect is, in your rural area neighborhood, it's gonna catch the full restrictions in the town plan. If someone comes in and they want to put in, as Dan gave you some examples of a small B&B that's owner operated, then it doesn't come into play. So we catch the big fish, not the small fish.
Okay, before Rebecca Genevieve, I see that you made a chat response about firming up language, and was there more to that? I wanted to make sure you had an opportunity to say anything you wanted to say on that.
No, I think it's great. I like the oversight on businesses that really change and really grow. No matter whether they're your best friends or not, it does affect land value and land use and right to quiet enjoyment. The one question I was in the middle of typing and you started talking, I think you answered it, is I'm a little concerned that in this wild development mode and people have a lot of surplus cash, do we have any specific language that says you cannot come in and build something, never live in it, and it is specifically a night-to-night rental? It is built for that, and that is exclusively what it is. We've had that. Do we have language to dissuade that?
In the rural areas, yes.
Great.
It's a little
I think
more
it's really
generous.
different when it's a cottage industry, like, I'm going to let some horse trail people use my house for the summer to offset my tax burden versus I'm going to buff out this house and make it a constant VRBO. That would really impact my neighbors. And I think that I just want to hear that we have language specifically for that.
Yes, that was our thinking as well. So
I'm glad.
Okay. And I think there was a question about the Act 250, the new rulings that occurred with Act 250. Those rulings, they are concerning, but as of now, those are for less than an acre, and that's a whole different issue, something that we would have no control over in the town plan. So unless we had an ordinance that restricted commercial development in rural areas on less than an acre.
Okay, am I cutting you off, Dan?
No, go ahead. I'm done.
Chris Mayer, next, please. If you could unmute him.
Yes, unmute yourself.
There we go. I can hear you, Chris.
Can you hear me? Yeah. So I don't know how this works particularly. I typed in really what my question is. I don't know who among you gets to read.
Okay, I'll read that.
But I'm thinking to myself, if I heard Jay correctly, what I heard was that the definition for a small business, or whatever the term was, is less than 50% of the residence is used for that business. And of course, that can be played with. But what if there is no residence on the property? What if it's a rural piece of land? There's no particular residence there, but there is heavy equipment there, and there's garage maintenance, and there's stuff going on there that's distinctly commercial, but the physical address of the business has nothing to do with the location of this particular piece of land. I'm just wondering if that's, understood as to how that gets handled.
Well, given the wording of the town plan now, and it's that really hasn't changed since we started doing town plans. That's not a home business. It's not a home a home occupation or a home business. So those things would have to go through Act 250. Now, there might well be, and we probably all can find examples around town of things that have just been there for years and are going on. Whether they have Act 250 permits or not, we don't necessarily know. And until someone, brings an action, we don't know. There's no, we don't have zoning here. So there's no other means of supervising those things. So, but in terms of the wording of the plan, if that's your question, Chris, what's limited in rural areas is home occupations. So and it's defined as a business that is conducted out of a home.
Okay. All right.
I could add to that. We're not trying to chase small contractors out of town, but small contractors almost always live on their property, and they used it, and it's just part of living in the town of Hartland, where you have a local occupation and a business. What you described as if someone doesn't live there but has a business, that's actually more onerous, because we do make provisions for people that live there, but we restrict their size. If you don't live there, then it's, again, a much more onerous situation and much more likely to be reviewed by, or be in the Act 250 game, and then reviewed under under regulation of the town plan, if that helps you on that.
If I might, Jay, too, the only enforcement is through Act 250.
Right.
The town has no mechanism to enforce any of really the town plan, only through Act 250. So if there's something like that going on, then you need to report it to Act 250 and get a project review sheet from them to determine whether in fact they do need an Act 250 permit.
Okay.
And once you're there, then our rules apply. But you have to, as John pointed out, you have to be in Act 250.
Thank you.
Okay. So if you're all set, Chris, I'm going to go on to, I think it's Andrea Ambrose. Andrea, you had a comment in the chat, and I didn't know if you wanted to expand on that. And you're unmuted, so you could speak now, Andrea.
No, I was just making a comment really to what Becky had brought up, and that definitely cottage industry and sort of Airbnb on a commercial scale has affected residences on Best Road that live pretty close to the road. There's a lot of increased traffic and fast traffic going right past the house. I understand that to be a challenge for who's.
We lost that last part, Andrea. I don't know if you want to re-say that last sentence.
I don't know exactly where you lost me, but just that it's a challenge for people with residences really close to the road, that it has changed the character of Best Road pretty significantly, having a commercial cottage establishment on that road.
Okay.
And it is in a rural area.
I'm writing that down. Okay. Okay. And I think it's Stacy with a comment. It sounds like it would be a small enterprise. Is that, are we talking about Christopher Mayor's suggest or his comments? Was there anything more that Stacy wanted to say? The audio, I think that we're not getting your audio correctly, Stacy. You might try and say that again and see if it works. There we go. I'm listening, but I'm not hearing anything, Stacy. And I can see that you're muted now. The first time any audio came in, it came in kind of garbled. She says, so yes to answer. Wait, sure what to do with that. I'll give you another. All right, okay. And Rebecca, Genevieve, you commented something about the best Jennyville Bridge. The best road, Jennyville Bridge. Is there anything more on that you wanted to say? And I see your hand is up, Rebecca. Do we have Rebecca unmuted? We're working on unmuting you back, Rebecca. There we go.
Yeah, that project, as well as a 3+ year, 8,000 square foot building project year round up here, has made this a very, very high traffic zone for a roadside homeowner. And my question that I'm trying to type in right now is, with increased building going on up high, really into the hinterlands, and let's just admit that is where the desirable big building is going to go. What can we do that the cost to the road impacts can be offsetted from the beginning of those projects? Where I lived for a long time, which went through a development boom, both in town and in the rural designations, in the Utah Park City area, we had a system of impact fees. It'd be something to work on and consider. Because this project, I don't know when it's going to end, but we're down to a 1-lane road here. And it's 24/7.
I'm writing that down.
Thank you.
Okay, I put that into my comments. Are there more comments about Chapter 9 economic development, specifically about the changes to the allowed uses in rural areas? And I'm watching for anybody putting their hand up or making comments in the text chat, although it's better if you put your hand up. And I'm watching, I'm not seeing any. Nope, we have one. Mary Blake.
This might come under the other section. I read it in the town plan from 2017. What is the town considering around noise ordinances, guns and all different kinds of things that go on with heavy equipment? Does that change from area to area? Or do we have anything to say that we want that?
I'll answer generally. Any businesses that are, would have to conform as they're defined in the town plan in order to, that would be our position at Act 250. In terms of town enforcement, I don't know, maybe Dave would answer this, whether we have a noise ordinance or anything like that, but the town plan doesn't address noise as a separate factor. That many times it's mentioned in the town plan that's to be discouraged, but in terms of just an enforcement mechanism for noisy projects and properties, the town plan does not accomplish that.
I think it said, I think I read that it recommended the town consider a noise ordinance, and I don't think there is one.
Mary, you have to realize, as do most people in town, there's no land use or zoning. Pretty much where the planning commission is limited to any project that comes.
That's me. Sorry, guys. Hold on.
Ordinances are by select board creation. Just standalone what you can do, gun noise, whatever it happens to be. It's not our jurisdiction, sadly, I suppose, but it isn't. So we can't answer your question for a project that doesn't come under Act 250 review. That's what we're limited to by virtue of what the town has not voted for, or the other organizations have promoted vis-a-vis land use ordinances.
Okay, it's still in a recommendation format in the current plan, and the town would have to take that up at the select board level. I understand.
Yeah, I mean, and Kevin just pointed out that it is, I forgotten exactly where it was, but but it's in there, but it's nothing more than that the planning commission, when it did the town plan, thought that the town should consider that, and there it is.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. If we're done with that, then I think we'll move on to Stacy Bradley. I see Stacy Bradley with her hand up, and we're unmuting you. I can hear that there's sound coming from you, Stacy. Can you try that again? We aren't getting any audio from you now, Stacy.
Can you hear me now?
Now I can hear you.
Okay, every time I get unmuted, it kicks me to the wrong microphone. Anyways, one question I haven't had a chance, I'll apologize for being able to read this document through all the way, but in light of events that have occurred within town in the last several months, does this town plan take into consideration looking at those areas in town where there are bridges and weight limits for bridges, or potentially weight limits for certain roads, and helping to guide and limit development that maybe not ought to occur, in particular for those areas where there might be dead end roads and so on and so forth, and how that, can be potential problems and impacts as we're seeing already in town in one area. I guess that's a question I have, whether the town plan takes any of that into consideration.
I would say it takes it into consideration in general terms that anything has to be appropriate to its neighborhood or to its area that it's going on in, and also that in rural areas or rural residential areas, it's limited to home businesses. So beyond that, though, I don't believe there's any specific provision as to weight limits on bridges and things like that. Those are within this, that's this mostly state jurisdiction, and that's where those limits are set. But I'm not, maybe Jay would know better, but I don't think we addressed that. Other than anything that to conform with the town plan, you would have to show that it doesn't change the character of a neighborhood. And if a neighborhood is in a place where there's a weight limited bridge, then anything that's going to attract or involve traffic over in excess of those limits isn't compatible with existing development patterns. So that would be the tool. But so again, the language is more general than specific. But I would have I'd be confident that that an Act 250 permit wouldn't be granted to a business that is going to routinely involve vehicle traffic that's in excess of what the local roads or bridges can handle.
John Bruno, again, we have to get back to the fact that the town has no regulatory process to control these, and that if you have a bridge that has a particular capacity on it that's serving an area that somebody subdivides it into a number of lots that doesn't require an Act 250 permit, there's going to be no regulatory process to control that. Criteria 5 under Act 250 deals with transportation and traffic and those types of issues. And with Act 250, you can't deny on criteria 5, but you can place conditions on it. So if you have a bridge that's not adequate, you could probably put a condition in the permit that the developer had to rebuild the bridge or had to do something to the bridge to get it up to capacity. But again, I think it's important to emphasize here that unfortunately this document has no regulatory control, and it only is related to projects that go to Act 250. And as was mentioned earlier about this huge house that's being built and blocking the road and all those kinds of things, again, there's no mechanism, I don't think, and Dave could address this within the town to do something like that, because that structure doesn't come under Act 250 jurisdiction. So our hands are tied relative to our ability to address a number of the concerns that have been voiced tonight.
Thank
Okay,
you.
I've written that into my comments here. Are there other comments on Chapter 9, Economic Development? I'm watching for more comments, not seeing more comments yet. So if I don't have any more comments, then I'm going to move on to the next chapter. And the rest of the chapters see no or minor changes. I'm going to start with Chapter 2, Natural History, Natural, Historic, and Scenic Resources. This involves historic resources, agricultural and forestry resources, natural areas, fragile areas, wildlife habitat, scenic and aesthetic resources, and a little tiny blurb about excavating and mining. Does anybody have comments about natural, historic, and scenic resources? And I'm watching for somebody to put their hand up, and I'm waiting to see if anybody does. I'm waiting to see. Yes, I have one person, Mary Blake.
Yeah, my question is around what you mean by excavation, and are you also in this section talking about and discussing some of the things that allow for connectivity to habitats, and just the types of things that go on in a fragile, sort of beautiful but irreplaceable wetland and vernal pools? Is this all the same section here?
This is all the same section. This is a pretty old section.
Okay.
And it does have some overlap with the new forest block section. And it mostly says that fragile areas are important to us and we want to conserve them.
Okay.
On the excavating and mining, it has a very short paragraph, and I'll just read it because it's so short. The western bank of the Connecticut River in Hartland is the site and source of an extensive and extraordinary valuable amount of gravel. This is a finite resource currently being extensively exploited by commercial extraction companies. You know what? Maybe this isn't as short as I thought it was. I was thinking about the blurb about, I've lost it. All right, here we go. So it talks about the gravel extraction, and inside of that excavating and mining policies, the big one is that we don't support any mining or milling of fissionable materials. And that's pretty much what that section is about, is the prohibition about mining or milling of fissionable materials.
Okay. It might be in a different section just around. So with land use, I understand Act 250 has to be triggered, but with things like the environment, you go to a different regulatory system. But I'll wait till the next part of the report to hear.
Well, mostly it takes Act 250 for us to trigger the town plan, because the town plan does not have any regulatory enforcement on its own. When a project is considered by Act 250, they ask, does it conform to the town plan? And so if somebody was going to come in and build a plant that was going to mill fissionable material, we would go to that policy and it would say, you can't do that here. And so we would say it's not conforming with the town plan, and that would be used in an Act 250 process. Does that make it any clearer?
Yeah, so it's the environmental and the enterprise, all of that's brought to Act 250 first. That's how it gets regulated, right? Is that right? Okay.
Yes. John, you want to add something?
Yeah, just another comment. There are other regulations other than Act 250. So in other words, if somebody goes in and fills in a wetland without getting a wetland permit, that's through the Agency of Natural Resources that you may not need to get an Act 250 for to do. If you change the course of a stream, or you go in and alter a brook or a stream or something, that comes under the Agency of Natural Resources and could be outside the jurisdiction of Act 250, but there's a whole series of other regulations. There's a septic regulation, there's a wastewater regulations, there's a water regulations. And a lot of these Agency of Natural Resource regulations are outside an Act 250 permit, but still would require that jurisdictional permit in order to do the work that they did. If they go and do it without a permit and they get caught, then they're dealing with the Attorney General's office with fines and, other potential issues that they have to deal with. So there is some other aspects of regulatory process with the state other than Act 250.
Okay, that answers my question. Thanks.
Okay, I'm just writing that down. I'll be right there. If somebody else has a question, please put your hand up. And Rebecca Genevieve.
Hi. I swear I'm almost done. This is sort of an odd one and it may not belong here, but you triggered something that was a known question I had for somebody. Is well fracking on anybody's radar. It was and I only point that out because it was a real eye opener to me, living pretty much at the headwaters of most of our town's water system, and my parents who live where supposedly the town aquifer is. It was really an eye opener to me to find out that a lot of people are fracking wells in town. And
Anybody,
that's for big homes up high, water runs downhill. Is anybody going to keep an eye on that?
that would
The
come
higher
under-
you go, the drier it is. So
Well, that's not necessarily true either, but anyways, I think that, you know, there are well drilling regulations.
okay, top of my road fracked their well, and we're all pretty worried about it.
I think fracking water wells is a lot different than fracking oil and
I know.
gas wells.
But it really could impact, as we get drier potentially, other people's water systems and wells. Is it just out there on the radar?
And protection of groundwater is part of the town plan, yes, and that's part of this section.
Super.
We don't have anything specific about fracking, but yes, but protection of groundwater is a part of this section.
But there are state regulations for well drillers and well drilling rules, and they're licensed. And if you've got a concern over that, I'm not sure that water well fracking is on the radar of the state. I don't know that for a fact at this point. I've been kind of out of it for a while.
Yeah, that's honestly why I'm throwing it out. It was really eye-popping for me.
Right, and if you've got a concern, then I would call the Department of Environmental Conservation down in Springfield and have a conversation with the water supply people.
I just come from a land use area out west where you're always have to think with water in mind, and I think we should.
Oh, I agree. But like I say, if you have any questions relative to regulations on fracking for water wells, contact the water supply division down in Springfield, and they could, I'm sure, answer your questions.
Great.
Typing, does anybody else have a comment on chapter 2? Watching for comments on chapter 2. I'm waiting to see if anybody puts their hand up. And I'm not seeing any. And so I am going to move on to chapter 3, water resources. And water resources plays right into Rebecca's comments. We talk about rivers and brooks and ponds, floodplains, wetlands, vernal pools, and groundwater. Does anybody have any comments about chapter 3, water resources? This is a chapter that wasn't changed in this go round. This is the same chapter that was in the 2017 plan. I don't have any changes on that. Looking for any comments on chapter 3. But I'm not seeing any. Oh, Helen Esmond. Nope, maybe not. I'll give Helen a chance to come back if she had a comment. Yes, Helen. And we're working on unmuting you, Helen. And we're almost there.
She's unmuted. She's on.
You may need to, there you go.
Okay. The only thing that I have to comment upon that, and I think it's on page 50 when I was reading through, I think you have to change some of the wording because it says something about the program will begin in 2018, and it talks about Act 250 and will be fully implemented by 2021. You just have to change some of the wordings in there, I think.
I saw that when I reread it yesterday, and I agree. We need to change that.
Thank you.
What page is that, Charles?
Page 50. Okay, any other comments about water resources, chapter 3? I'm not seeing any, so I am going to move on to chapter 4, housing, and that's Jim.
Great, thanks, Charles. So the housing chapter in general really covers the supply, cost, and types of housing that we have in Hartland. There really have not been any changes to this chapter except for cosmetic changes or grammatical corrections. Some of the data is a little bit old, so hopefully we're going to get more updated data as 2020 census data is available to us. So that those figures might change between now and the next version of the plan. But basically it's the same with one added statement around the fact that housing in Hartland should be, that's new or rehabilitated should be safe and sanitary. That's the one addition. So does anybody have any questions about the housing chapter?
I'm watching for anybody putting their hand up to make a comment. I'm watching, I'm not seeing any comments. Not seeing anybody put their hand up for a comment. And so I'm going to move on to chapter 5. And Rebecca, do you want to give an intro to chapter 5?
Sure. Chapter 5 gives statistics about Hartland's roads and some information about how to do curb cuts and brief paragraphs about parking, pedestrians and bicyclists, public transit, air and rail. And then it has a section about our goal and policies regarding transportation and recommendations. And I think there might be some things we need to update in here that we missed, just because it said, I think it said that Route 5 hasn't been improved in a while, but I might be looking at, I might have been seeing that in the index, because we did repave Route 5. I don't know if that was part of this, but, and I thought I saw something in, maybe it's in the appendix about charging fees for going over bridges that are weight limited, that the town could collect these fees if we desired. So that might be something we look into going forward. That's about it for transportation. Any questions?
Any questions? Yes, Phil Hovey. Are you still there, Phil? Did you still have a comment? Your hand went away. Waiting to see if Phil's going to come back. Yes, Phil. And we'll get you unmuted. Working on it. And you might be muted on your end, Phil.
Okay.
There we go.
In the chapter, there's a discussion of the scenic roads, and it identifies Route 5 as along the Connecticut River. But there's a few sentences about the our town roads being possibly designated as scenic roads. And my question really is one of looking for information. What does that, how does that benefit the town should that be done?
Maybe we can apply for funding to support the scenic nature of the roadside, or potentially use it to block unwanted development along those roads.
Designation for roads. Phil Hovey's asking. Yeah. All right. Dan, would you like to comment on that, Dan?
Well, just generally, I mean, it would just be another criteria if the town were to designate a scenic road. Any development that would impact that road would be another criteria to consider whether they would receive an Act 250 permit, whether it would be consistent with the town plan. So so one way that it would affect the town would be just adding to the criteria for an Act 250 permit.
Hey, Phil, what page or item number are you on?
I'm looking at the report with all the edits. It's on page 75, so it's in the transportation. But that's the 75 of the.
On page
report with the-
59 of
58 is the scenic road.
58 and 59 of the current plan, it talks about scenic roads. I didn't think we made any edits to this section.
I mean, on the bottom of 58, the paragraph starts, Vermont law provides for local scenic road ordinance to preserve the scenic quality of the rural landscape. So I presume if you were to identify a road as a scenic road, you could have specific and special ordinances as they would relate to preserving that scenic road. I mean, the other issue with that is if you wanted to go in, if it is designated as a scenic road, and Dave may have some additional comments on this, is that then you wanted to go in and widen it, or you needed to do some ditching, or you needed to do some maintenance, that you cut some trees or whatever that would sort of affect the scenic quality, then you may have some problems in doing future maintenance of that road to bring it up to standards if it had been identified as a scenic road. So there's a balance probably between what you want to achieve and what you need to do for, future transportation.
Phil, I don't know if anything, excuse me, could be learned from Route 5 as a scenic highway, if any funding becomes available to widen a bike lane or things like that. I don't know how you can, I don't know how to answer your question, or maybe we don't, about a specific benefit for declaring a road scenic. Yes, we haven't got that far yet. But it might have something to do with funding, or as John pointed out, ditching, and how maintenance or improvements are made, the quality of the improvements.
Okay, thank you.
And Rebecca Genevieve, I saw your comment about scenic roads, and I am putting those comments in. If you have more to say on that, please raise your hand. And KG.
Kevin.
KG is talking about scenic roads having some rules under Title 19, Chapter 25. But they're different than national scenic byways.
I can put the link to the statute in the chat for folks.
Oh, that's KG. Huh, I didn't know who KG was. Kevin Geiger. Any other comments about transportation?
One
Not
thing that
seeing
might be
any.
interesting to discuss in the future would be how Google Maps represents certain things, and making corrections to that if we find errors. Could that be under the purveyance of the Planning Commission?
I'm writing that down.
I saw a vernal pool pointed out on Google Maps. I'm surprised to see that. It's like, who put that there?
Really, it is odd.
Yeah, I think it's near MacArthur Brook.
Okay, other comments about transportation? I see DG says, I believe scenic roads are an important aspect of life in Hartland and why many folks live where they do. We support scenic roads designation. All right, getting that down. Anybody else with comments? Small detail in the class 4 highway section. Ensure INSSURE should be ensure ENSURE. All right, I'll write that down. Okay, I put that in. Any other comments about transportation?
The only thing I'd point out is that on page 57, the difference between the 2017 town plan and the one we're talking about today, we added a little more definition about the policy on class 4 roads of when does work have to be done on a culvert or bridge. So there's a section in the third paragraph where we clarified that. That had to do with does the town really have to fund any work at all on a class 4 road? And there is only one provision, only one condition under which that would be necessary. And we defined what that was. Just wanted to point that out. Again, page 57, third paragraph.
All right, any other comments? I don't see any other comments, so I'm going to move on to the next section. And the next section is regional context, meaning how does Heartland's town plan affect the towns or the region around us? Does anybody have any comments on that? And I'm hearing no comments. So I'm going to move on to, I guess that's pretty much it. We have chapter 11, implementation. I don't have anybody on my list to speak about that. Did anybody have any comments on chapter 11? Not hearing any. Okay, so Phil, I have a comment from Phil. And we're getting you unmuted. May have to, there you go.
Okay, in chapter 11, there's a mentioning of creating a capital budget committee to use as a benefit to use the capital budget as a mechanism for limiting the rate of growth. I must admit that I've tried to read the town plan in the past. I never saw that before. Are there any examples of how we're doing that today or have done that in the past? And what might be an example that I could be thinking of or why we should form this committee?
What page was that on again?
It's in chapter 11. Again, I have the version with all the edits, and on that it's on page 29 under implementation.
See if I can find that.
103.
103.
It's under implementation tools. You have zoning bylaws, subdivision regulations, flood hazard, highway policies, and then capital budget.
Yep, I'm looking at that now.
Page 103.
Thank you.
I don't have any specific comments on that. Does anybody else have any comments on that from the planning commission? And so what we're looking for there, Phil, is examples of how that could be used or has been used.
Correct.
Does anybody have a copy of the 2017 plan? I wonder if this is a carryover.
I do have it.
It is, Jay, I'm looking at it in the 2017, and it doesn't seem to be struck or underlined or anything, so it looks, it may be a carryover.
Yeah, I was like,
You'll have to forgive us, Phil, if things get carried over, and maybe we'll go back to the 2010 plan to see if we have a better understanding of why that was inserted.
okay, so it's page 103.
Again, I think it may be an aspect of Act 250, because one of the criterion in Act 250 is you evaluate the impact of a particular development on the community's ability to support it. Fire, police, roadways, schools, and what the what the potential capital expenses are for that development to the town. So that may be just kind of reinforcing that criteria as it relates to the town plan.
Okay. Sounds like we'll need to research that.
It would seem, Phil, that if one had an idea of what project or a project that was going to be developed or had that possibility, would such a project then promote a study under a capital budget program? I know that's the best I can do at the moment. Somebody coming that decides they want to come into the industrial zone and build a factory, if you will, where as an appropriate location for one. And if the town wants to, encourage that, is a capital budget a mechanism to promote such a development. That makes sense, John?
Yeah, or if you want to build a 500 unit condominium project, what impact that has on the community.
We'll scratch our head, Bills, I guess.
So I have Rebecca Genovese has her hand up. Rebecca?
Yeah, I think this may or may not belong there, but maybe this is where my thinking was going, in that I would really like the planning commission to be focusing on future proactive thinking about gigantic mega homes up high. Because it doesn't need to be a big industrial development to destroy a road, a bridge. This is year-round building on these things, okay? At a high, 2 summers in a row, there were 24 people in and out a day. This has a real particular construction style that needed a tremendous amount of fill. It's only by the grace of who the excavator was that wasn't an ultimate catastrophe for this entire neighborhood. Had it all had to go over that little tiny Best Bridge, we would have been in real trouble. I think, you know, the big picture future is mega money way up high before we have a chance maybe to get any tax income out of it. They've already cost the town a tremendous amount of money in roads damage. And that scares me. And that's the way building goes and will probably continue to go as we have climate refugees from out west where our real estate still looks really cheap. I think the capital thing that has guided our real estate from exploding is in fact land costs. But from a Western perspective, we're still a bargain. And that's scary.
Make a note of that. To the planning board. I mean, from what I've heard so far, if it's not an Act 250 project and you have 10 acres of land, you can basically build whatever you want on it. We have no zoning, right? Wouldn't that be a zoning issue?
That is the
Building on an
other
acre of land.
So, you know, without zoning, I'm not sure, and it's a question, does the planning board even have any sway? No.
It would take zoning for us to control residential home building.
Right.
Unless it's a large development that goes into Act
Like
250.
multi-unit.
But yeah, so this project, this hypothetical mega home project
Single family
would
home.
not go under Act 250.
Right.
But what I have heard is that there is concern for some type of an impact that would take place. And I think it would be within our jurisdiction to explore wording that might support that. We may discover that we can't, but it would be something that would be good for us to look for not only now, but for future construction.
And we certainly heard a lot of concern about it at this meeting tonight.
Yeah.
Kevin, do you have anything to add on this subject?
Yeah, in that houses, again, don't trigger Act 250 regardless of how palatial they are. And about the only thing right now would be if all of that traffic and material was impacting the physical town highway and they were putting things within the right of way or damaging the surface, then the select board just has their usual authorities to protect the road. But I get the landowner's concern and yeah, the town plan, the current structure of the town plan and the Act 250 really can't do anything about that. Doesn't mean the rules can't ever change, but that's the current structure.
Thanks for that gloomy news.
Any other comments?
No, I just wondered if the big development, maybe when somebody files a plan for something that's going to be 20,000 square feet up high and take 5 years, maybe they pay for culvert replacement up front, or maybe there's an impact fee, X number of miles from a paved road times X number of square feet filed in a building plan. There's your culvert.
I think that would be something we could, the town could consider as an ordinance. At the moment, we wouldn't be able to.
You should recommend it.
Yeah.
To the select board.
Yeah. Oh, write that down. Okay. Any other comments about chapter 11 implementation? And yes, Dan Gotzigan. Hi, Dan.
I'm unmuted. Can you hear me okay? I was
Can
just,
hear you now.
if you're making recommendations to the select board about ordinances about road use, just one that came up earlier is about noise on the road. I think it's not just physical impact to the road and roadbed and culverts, but the noise on the road, especially if you live close to the road, of trucks that are very loud and often unmufflered coming by, late in the middle of the night, late at night. So I just wonder if it doesn't fall under land use, obviously, but if that could be a general recommendation of something to be considered to the select board, some kind of ordinance in that regard.
Okay, I've added that. Do we have any other comments? And I think we can branch out to general comments about the plan. If people didn't have a place to stick their comment previously under one of the chapters, does somebody have a general comment? I'm watching for any comments at all at this point. A comment that you didn't think fit under any of the chapters, you could make at this time. I'm not seeing any new comments. I guess that means that we have taken the public comment that's available. Do we have anything from the rest of the board?
Yeah,
before?
actually, I want to come back to Kevin for a minute.
Okay.
Under the implementation section, yes, we talk about capital budget. Kevin, what do other towns do? Well, wait a minute, there aren't many other towns that don't have land use. As far as impact fees go, I mean, yeah, we talk about capital budget. We have no control over that. The select board does. What is it we could recommend to the select board on all these myriad of issues that people have brought up about noise and fast trucks and development? Any thoughts on that in general?
Well, I think on the noise, as someone mentioned, and you have in your current plan that the town, should consider a noise ordinance. So that's as much as you can do, putting that on their plate. As for capital budgeting and impact fees, yes, you would need a capital budget program before you can put in impact fees. The only town around here that does impact fees is Hartford. And the two go together, because you need to be figuring out like, oh, we're planning on so many houses out that neck of the woods that we're going to need another, a second town garage or a fire station or a something. And then we will divide all that expected development by the cost of that thing in our capital budget. And then we'll charge them all and put that special money in the special pot for that particular thing. And if you don't build it, you owe them all the money back. So it's really a mechanism for pretty heavy duty development that, house by house, there's hardly any way to do that. It's like people want traffic studies sometimes for a house. Even the biggest house generates no traffic on the traffic study models. And so you kind of can't, it's just too small to register on the things. That said, the Planning Commission actually does have a role in capital budgeting, and that you guys can, when you're not doing the town plan, you guys can actually start the capital budget process based upon the utilities and facilities section of the town plan, and then hand it off to the select board. I've worked with several towns doing that. Most of your capital budget would really be about issues like the roof on the town hall and the town garage and buying a plow and relatively things that that pretty much everybody knows are going to happen. But how are they going to happen? When are they going to do it? How much it's going to cost? That type of stuff. Versus, we need a new school. We need a new sewer plant. We need we have all this development driving a major expenditure.
Well, thanks for the insight.
Okay. Any other comments? Bill says, thank you, Planning Commission. I'm going to put that in the comments. And more thank yous for our good work and our time. Any other comments about the town plan? Well, I thank everybody for coming and adding to this tonight. We're going to be taking these comments and reviewing what we have for a town plan, seeing if there's more revisions we want to make before we send it to the select board. And then the select board will also hold their own public hearings, and we will. So I am gonna close the public hearing now unless I see somebody raise their hand. Jay raises his hand and has something to say.
If, at least for those of you on Zoom, doesn't seem to be we have one guest here. Please be aware that this is the first of at least 2 public hearings. The Planning Commission will accept written comments. If you come to our meeting, whatever you want to say, we're here to listen and to work it in to whatever we're going to come up with for a final version that then goes to the select board, who then will have their own hearing. So again, this is it is a public hearing, 1 of 2, but it's the first one where we try to introduce everyone to what's in the plan. And so please look at this as just an initial proposition, and we'll make changes, and we're anxious to hear as well as listen.
All right, well, thank you for the well wishing in the chat. At this time, unless I see somebody else say that they have another comment, I'm going to close this public hearing for the Hartland Town Plan, and I think that will be it. Do we have is 5 a quorum? Yep, I guess we can keep that on. So I'm going to close the public hearing for the town plan of Hartland. And I'm going to ask that the commissioners stay on the line for a quick commissioners meeting.
Senior, if you get out, the presenters are already on, and I keep my computer on. Can they participate still without you? Can we still use the Zoom?
We're going to be 5 minutes, I think.
Yeah, that'll be about 5 minutes.
Yeah. The only thing I have is, do we want to make because we do have a warned meeting for tonight for the Planning Commission as well as the public hearing.
Well, unless you have anything to say, I would make a motion to adjourn to have that one.
I didn't know if we had to make a motion.
I think you have to open it and then probably close it.
I was gonna, all right, then I'm gonna open I'm opening the Hartland Planning Commission meeting. The only thing that I was gonna say is that we do have some comments to review. And so we would not want to vote to send this to the select board at this time. And so I'd like to suggest that we table it until our next meeting to review those comments at our next meeting.
And I'm not trying to add things to people's plates. Can we talk a little bit back and forth in email, just so we don't lose the train of thought until the next meeting? I know that's not a great way to communicate,
But I'm
but
not sure it matters whether they're here or not.
there may be some things we can just check off and get it out of the way, and we're just left with a couple.
Or do we want to try and schedule a meeting?
No, I'm talking about between now and the next meeting.
And then we do get into open meeting rules on that we don't really want to discuss it as a commission
Yeah, all right.
outside of the meeting.
Are we gonna be putting together a list of these comments?
Yes, I have a list of comments here that I just saved.
Well, I think let's, send out the comments to everybody
Right.
that we could just kind of look over before the next